Google and Apple are finally making it easier to switch between the Android and iOS ecosystems.
And I finally got to try some new Android XR prototypes, and they were incredible.
I'm Mishaal Rahman.
And I'm C. Scott Brown, and this is the Authority Insights podcast, where we break down the latest news and leaks surrounding the Android operating system.
So the details are a bit light right now, but Google and Apple have apparently confirmed that they are working together to make transferring data between Android and iOS devices a little bit easier during setup. If true, this could be a huge deal.
And another huge deal is that Google could finally be bringing the heat to Meta with releasing some Android XR smart glasses. So these would be based on the Android XR operating system that we've already seen on other devices. But next year, we'll finally actually get glasses that will compete against the Meta Ray Bans. And finally, we've discovered clues that Google is working on its own version of NameDrop for Android. This feature will let you send contact info by tapping two Android phones together, just like we did way back in the day with the Bump app. If you are ancient like me, then you'll remember that.
Oh, come on, Scott. We're not that old. We're not. That's like let us live a little longer for before they start calling us hunks.
Yeah.
Uh, so before we move on to the name drop story, circling back to the Android and Apple data transfer story, I wanted to kind of touch on that first because that's the one we kind of have the least amount of details on because it was kind of a surprise announcement. So Google they released the latest Android Canary update last week, and at the same time, they kind of told 9 to 5 Google that there is apparently some kind of improved, enhanced data transfer solution between Android and iOS, but they didn't share like any details whatsoever. All they said was that they are collaborating together, Google and Apple, to improve data transfer. Like we basically have, that's it. That's all we know. They're working on making it easier to transfer data during setup of a new Android phone or of a new iOS device. And the only thing that we do know is that these changes are live in the latest 2.5.12, the December Android Canary release, and they will be coming to a future iOS 26 beta release. That's all we know, but we don't really know exactly what these changes entail. But our resident APK teardown specialist, Assemble Debug, took a look through the Android Restore applications and he figured out some potentially new details. So, first of all, he discovered that some of the things that might be transferable include accessibility settings, music playlists, passwords and passkeys, wallet cards, and Wi Fi credentials. And that, in contrast, currently, Android supports transferring things like your photos, your contacts, messages, and some free applications that are available cross platform across a cable. So it would be a big upgrade to have these new data types that are being supported with the cross device transfer. So, Scott, I wanted to get your kind of first reaction to this news. What are your thoughts on this surprise announcement by Apple and Google? Like, were you expecting it? Is this a wise move for Apple to do? Like, why would Apple even sign on to doing this, considering they've long been a proponent of their walled garden ecosystem approach?
I mean, I definitely did not expect this. I don't think anyone expected this. Like, this is so out of left field for Apple. I mean, it's not very out of left field for Google because Google obviously wants to make it as easy as possible for people who are deciding to exit the iOS ecosystem and come over to Android. But yeah, Apple for years and years and years, the entire time the iPhone's been around, has been doing everything it possibly can to prevent people from leaving iOS and going to Android. I think this comes down to regulation. I think that Apple is starting to realize that if it wants to avoid spending millions or probably in total now, probably billions of dollars in court and in fees and in all these things for its monopolistic practices.
Hmm.
If it wants to avoid those things, it has to start figuring out. It has to start being proactive. It starts to have to figure out, like, okay, what are they going to go after about us next? Can we preemptively change that before they come down on us? And this, seems like a pretty solid strategy to me. Like, this seems like a good thing. Like, Apple can then go to, the EU can come to Apple and Apple can be like, well, look at this. It is now far easier for people who have iPhones to leave and go to Android. Isn't that great? Please leave us alone. So I think that's the strategy. Which is fine by me because in that case, the consumers win. Like, there is no consumer disadvantage to anyone being able to easily leave Android to go to iOS or iOS to go to Android. Consumers only win in that scenario.
So of these 5 data transfer types, so accessibility settings, music playlists, passwords and passkeys, wallet cards, and Wi-Fi credentials, keep in mind that these are all that we think that they are adding support for transferring. There could be more, or it could be none of these. Which of these do you think is going to be the most impactful for the end user?
I would probably say the I don't know, like I think it's more just like all of it. Like
Hmm.
it's a pain to do anything, the transfer of anything when it doesn't happen seamlessly.
Yeah.
Like for example, like the bank card thing sounds like it'd be really good, but I can only assume that you're still going to have to enter in some sort of verification, you know, that these bank cards are your bank cards. And I can't imagine that it's just going to be I have my Google Wallet cards and then whoop, now they're on my iPhone. Like I just can't, like that's a security nightmare waiting to happen. So
Hmm.
there'd have to be some sort of checks and balances on on the iPhone side or on the Android side to show that, like, yes, I do actually own these cards. Here's my information and all that. So I guess what I'm saying is there's already so much inconvenience built into transferring from one thing to another. I think that anything that they can do to make it, more streamlined is going to be better. Um, I can't, yeah, I obviously
Hmm.
photos and videos, those are really important to people, messages, but I feel like that transfer is already pretty set. So I don't know. I think it's just all of it, as much as we possibly can get.
Yeah. And there is it's never like Apple has long benefited from its walled garden approach, but globally they don't have the majority of the market share. So even though maybe in the US this might hurt them more than it benefits them because they do have a greater market share compared to Android, there are other markets where that's not true. There are other markets where Android completely dominates in terms of market share. So this could benefit them more in those markets. So I can see it as a dual play where they want to stave off potential antitrust, insight from the EU regulators or other markets around the world that think, okay, Apple's intentionally making it too difficult to change devices, and that these are kind of basic settings that should be transferable between devices, so you don't have to, you know, be committed to one ecosystem for life, basically. And at the same time, they see, okay, this is a way for us to gain some inroads and potentially get some market share from Android manufacturers, from people who are looking to switch from Android to iOS, because there will never be a lot of people who want to do that, and all the people who want to switch from Android to iPhone. So it does benefit both platforms, and I'm glad to see that even if these may be like the lowest lower hanging fruit compared to some other settings and other services that currently aren't transferable, it is still nice to see any kind of improvement between the cross platform compatibility, because it is, as phone reviewers, I don't know about you, but setting up a new phone is one of the most annoying things in the world for me, because there's just
Yeah.
so many things you have to do, so many rituals you gotta take care of, so many things so many check boxes you gotta take off, all these apps you gotta restore and sign back into. It's just a nightmare, and I imagine that it is something that a lot of people put off, a lot of regular users put off because they don't want to go through that hassle.
Yeah, and one thing I want to touch on with this discussion is that, you know, Apple has been so closed off to this kind of thing for so long. But in my opinion, Apple shouldn't be worried about this at all. Like, let's say it's super easy to go from iOS to Android. Why would Apple be scared of that? Like, why would Apple not want that? Because
Hmm.
what I would assume they would think is that the person's going to leave iOS and go to Android and then be like, wow, this is not as good as iOS, and then go back to iOS. So if Apple is scared that people are going to leave iOS and then not come back, what does that say about iOS? Like, is Apple really confident that people can leave? So it's almost like that old saying, like, if you love something, set it free. Like it's kind of a similar thing with this
Hmm.
with this transfer thing. If you're super confident that iOS is the best operating system and is attached to the best mobile phone, open the doors, let people out, and let them discover and say, like, wow, like Android's garbage. Like I gotta get out of here and go back to iOS. And if you're afraid they're not going to do that, then what does that really say about iOS? So yeah, so I think that it's in Apple's best interest to allow this to happen because this will put it to the test. Like, is it really better at iOS? Well, go and find out. And here you go. Here's the keys. Go do it. So yeah, we'll be interesting to see how this pans out for Apple.
And speaking of putting things to the test, Scott, you the week before Google made its big second Android XR announcement, you went to Mountain View and you actually got to try out all the new hardware, all the new prototype XR glasses that Google had to show off and that they will be announcing and releasing next year. So I kind of want to just throw it to you. Like, what exactly did you try out? What did Google announce? Like, what did you see?
So Google showed me prototypes of devices running Android XR, and unfortunately, they did not let me photograph the prototypes. But you don't have to. Just I can tell you right now, they look just like Metas. They look just like Meta Ray Bans. They're the Wayfarer style glasses. They have thick black frames. They have two cameras, one here, one here. There's speakers on the stems that fire into your ears. Like it's all the same stuff. So the fact that Google wouldn't let me photograph them doesn't really matter because you already know what they look like. They look like all the other smart glasses you've seen so far. What was different though, obviously, is that they run Android XR. And this was such a dramatic shift away from everything that I've seen from smart glasses so far. The way Google is integrating Android XR into this wearable experience is just unbelievably good. Like unbelievably good. They're prototypes, so they're obviously rough around the edges, but even then, like I immediately saw how these glasses could integrate into someone's life immediately. You take them out of the box, you put them on, and you're ready to go. And it was so much easier to use than Meta's glasses. For people who maybe don't know, the newest Meta glasses are a monocular system. So in other words, there's one display in one of the lenses, and then the other lens is just a lens. And in order to control the operating system that you visually see in this one lens, you have a wristband. It's called the neural band, and that allows you to do gestures in the air like this and swipe things around and pick things and whatever. So you have to wear this wristband to control the operating system. And the operating system is very phone like. It's very colorful, lots of buttons, lots of things to push and trigger and swipe and all that stuff. And Google is saying that is bad and is doing the exact opposite. Android XR on these glasses is incredibly simplistic, the most minimalistic thing that I've ever seen Google do. Like, there's nothing on the display. It's just the core information that you need, and then that's it. And I think this is smart. Like, the idea that you'd have this phone operating system on your face is incredibly distracting. If I'm having a conversation with somebody and I'm trying to I get a text message and this big whoosh, colorful text message pops in and whatever, that's incredibly distracting. But on Android XR, you have that conversation and you just, this little white text comes in the side and says, this is the message you got. And then it just goes away. So Google's being very deliberate about what they're trying to do with these glasses, and it was great. So anyway, there's a monocular glasses, so one lens, and then there is an audio only version. So it's just lenses, just no visuals whatsoever, just audio stuff. And those are both coming out in 2026. They're going to be made in partnership with Samsung and traditional glasses companies known as Gentle Monster and Warby Parker, which you probably have heard of. And then in the far future, there is going to be a binocular version, which obviously means two lenses, which will allow you to create the illusion of depth in what you're seeing through the lenses. Those won't come until 2027 or later. So really exciting. 2026 is going to be a big year for wearable, smart glasses experiences, and I think Google is going to be at the forefront of it all.
Hold on a second. Isn't there another kind of glasses like the Project Aura? What about those?
Yeah, so Project Aura is very different, and there's been some confusion about this. So Project Aura is made by a company called XReal in partnership with Google, and really they're just the Galaxy XR, the full on VR headset. They're just that pared down to glasses. So they have a cable that runs out of the stem into a smartphone sized puck. So you'll be carrying around this puck thing that's wired into your glasses at all times, and the lenses are thick, like, I would say probably about as thick as like an earbuds case. Like they're very thick on your
Wow.
face, and then they basically are a one-to-one recreation of the Galaxy XR. So it's, full on Android XR experience, full color visuals. You can play all the games, you can do all the things that you would do. It's a VR experience basically, but in these really thick glasses. They are not designed for living your life, walking around, going to a cafe, walking from one place to the other, getting directions, whatever. They are designed to be sitting on a couch, or what Xreal is really planning on, sitting on a plane, sitting on a train, getting from one place to the other. And you want to have,
Mhm.
an immersive VR experience that's much more portable, but not as
Mm.
big and immersive as something like Galaxy XR. So like like an in between zone. So they are very different, and they are also coming in 2026. But yeah, I would say most people would want a Galaxy XR because they're going to get better battery life, and it's going to be fully immersive. You're not going to have like the outside world kind of like around you as you use them. Um, Whereas the X Real glasses, the Project Aura is going to be like a hybrid, an in between. Like, okay, you don't want glasses you wear all day, but you also don't want a headset. Here you go. Here's a more portable version of the Galaxy XR. It did work. I tried them out for a little while, and it was fun. They were fun to use. The puck got kind of hot. um, it comes with a belt clip, so you can clip it to your belt instead of putting it in your pocket. And yeah, if I had that thing in my pocket, it would have been uncomfortable. Uh, so yeah, so it's a prototype. It's got a ways to go, but yeah, it worked. It was the Galaxy XR experience on glasses. So
All right, very interesting. I mean, only had the brief opportunity to try, I think, the monocular lens prototype at Google I/O. I didn't have a chance to try
yeah,
the
for like
audio
90
only
seconds,
one.
right?
Yeah, for like 90 seconds. I didn't get like the full rundown of everything that it could do. But I kind of wanted to hear your thoughts on something else. So you brought up earlier that one reason why you think that Google's Android XR experience is better than Meta's is that it's less distracting. You have kind of like that little pop up that shows you the notification versus like the full screen display where you control things with the wristband or whatever they call it. But I think in your article, your hands on, you mentioned another reason why you think that Google's approach is better. And it's like has to do with how developers add support for Android XR applications, for Android XR experiences. Can you tell us a little bit about what makes Google's approach better?
So Meta, if you buy a pair of these Meta glasses, the operating system only supports Meta apps at the moment. The only exception to this is Spotify, I believe. Spotify has an app on these glasses, but everything else is Instagram, WhatsApp, and Facebook. So if you want to have a chat with someone on your glasses and get notifications and do all those types of things, it all has to be through Meta properties. This is obviously bad. Like, even if you're not one of those people who hates Meta, and obviously I'm sure a lot of people listening to this podcast hate Meta. Even if you don't hate Meta, though, the idea that you can't have all the apps that you want, on your glasses is bad. Google's strategy is to not use apps at all. So what they're doing is your phone is the brains of the operation, and your phone's notification system is the app. So it's kind of hard to explain, but okay, so imagine you're listening to music on your phone, and you pull down your notification drop down, and at the top you'll have a music player. Whether you're listening to YouTube music or Spotify or whatever, you have that music player, and it always looks the same. It has the same design, the same core features, same buttons are in the same place, whatever. That is the app. So what happens is that notification then becomes a persistent notification on your eyes, and you can see that experience. Same thing with Uber. So let's say you get an Uber, and you have that persistent notification in your drop down. That is the app that appears in your glasses. So really, there is there is no, you're going to take these glasses out of the box, put them on your face, and you're already going to have apps. You're already going to have the experiences because they're already going to be on your phone. And developers only need to add, like, I think it was like 3 API hooks or something. It's a crazy small amount of code that they have to add to their apps to make this work. So really, like, the sky's the limit. Like, any app developer could make an app that appears in your glasses within a day, let's say a week. Within a week of these glasses coming out, there could be hundreds, if not thousands, of experiences through the apps you already have installed on your phone. Way, way different than what Meta is doing and way better because, yeah, it's not, you're not going to have to go to Meta and be like, hey, Meta, I have an app. I want to use it on these glasses. Can I do that? And Meta strokes its chin and says, yeah, sure. Okay, we can do that. And then 6 months later, there's an app. With Google, it's like Google's like, here are the API hooks, put them in your app. Boom, glasses. So like it's going to be a game changer. Like no no
Mm,
waiting, no having to wait until there's an store that has a bunch of apps that you want to use, no re-downloading the apps that you already have on your phone. It just works. It's going to be so cool.
interesting. I kind of wonder what's preventing Meta from just copying that approach because, from my understanding, the Meta Ray-Ban displays, it basically does most of the computing, at least most of the processing, like a lot of data collection still happens on your phone, like through the companion application. Like obviously, those glasses, they are not actually tracking your location as you're walking around. They don't have GPS built in or mobile data chipset to actually track your location from satellites, right? Your phone does that. And all the Meta Ray-Ban companion app does is like it beams that location data and then it shows that on the watch's or sorry, the glasses interface. Maybe they could do something similar with their companion app. Maybe their companion app could implement something to listen and scrape notifications from like Uber or your music player, and then they could do something similar to what Google's doing with Android XR. I kind of wonder if they'll just update the Ray-Ban to do something like that. Although I don't know if something similar would be possible on the iOS side of things, just because I'm not as familiar with the kind of limitations with the notifications APIs they have there. But I feel like this is something that Meta could also do. But at the same time, they would be relying on a competitor's operating system to provide them the functionality they need to make their glasses work great, which, as you know, they have no control over. They can't really decide what developers have to add to integrate into their applications to make their notifications look nice on their glasses versus Google. They have the operating system on both the glasses and smartphones. They can kind of integrate both quite nicely. They can make changes to the core operating system to make things look really well on the XR glasses. But who knows? It is. I do think that is a clever approach, a better approach than what Meta's has, which is just like full screen apps on your face. I definitely think it's a lot better to just have these contextual information that's basically pulled from notifications. So yeah, I agree. That's a much better approach than what we have right now.
Yeah, and I think to go back to what you were talking about with Meta, like Meta, it might just be Meta wants the control. Like they want the control of that data. They want the control of the operating system. They want to you know they want to be strict about what happens on these glasses. And Google is much more just like, yeah, we're giving you the operating system, and what experiences app developers come up with is going to be fine with us because it's all just based on these notifications. um yeah, and of course, you mentioned like, oh well, Meta could do this and scrape notifications or whatever, but I feel like Google has no incentive to help Meta do this, like, because Google would just be like, well, why don't you just use Android XR? Like, why are, we're giving you a entire operating system that you could use and you're using your own, so go for it, do whatever you got to do, but if you want our help, your best option is to just use Android XR, which of course Meta would not want to do. So yeah, Meta's kind of digging themselves into a little bit of a hole there. But we'll see. I could be totally wrong. It could be that people want an app experience. They want to be able to navigate through a glasses display, launch an app, do the things that they would normally do on a phone just on their eyes. And the Android XR experience of having notifications that you can interact with, that are based on the notifications on your phone might be too anemic. They're like, this isn't powerful enough. This isn't what I want. I could be wrong. From my experience using them, though, I was like, this is the way. But, we'll see what
Mm.
happens in 2026.
Well, I mean, even if Android XR's approach to notifications and the UI is technically superior, we all saw what happens that even if Google makes a technically superior product, like with Google Glass, which a lot of people think now in hindsight was way ahead of its time, it kind of flopped and got a bad reputation from the public because people, didn't really like the idea of having a computer on your face. Well, fast forward to today, Meta has seen great success with the Ray-Ban brand and partnership. Do we think Google now relaunching, bringing glasses back to the public? Do you think they have a better shot now? Do you think we'll actually see as widespread success as Meta is seeing now? Do you think their partnerships with traditional glasses brands like Warby Parker and Gentle Monster will help them a lot? Like, what do you think? What do you see will happen with the Android XR launch?
I think there's going to be a period of time. It could be a year, could be 2 years. I don't know, but there's going to be a period of time where people are going to outright reject smart glasses like this. We're already seeing it. We're already seeing. I saw an article just yesterday about a cruise line that is banning smart glasses. So it's just like if you step onto this ship, you have to take those glasses off. And people are concerned about the same things they were concerned about with Google Glass. Like somebody's walking around, they have glasses on. You can't really tell, are they smart glasses, are they not? And that person's recording you, and you just have no idea. At least with a phone, if someone's recording you, you can see they've got the phone in their hand and you can see that they're recording you, and you can cover your face or walk away or whatever. But with the smart glasses, you have no idea until you're right up on top of them. And then, you see the little LED light or whatever, and you're like, oh, I'm being recorded by that person. And I had no idea. So, people are going to have to get used to that, or they're not. That might that might happen too. This might be a bridge too far for some people. They might just be like, no, like if you have smart glasses on, you're not welcome here. You're not welcome on this cruise ship. You're not welcome in this coffee shop. You're not welcome at this theater or whatever. That just might be what we end up doing. We might draw a hard line. And in that case, Meta and Google and all the other companies that are trying to make these things happen will have to figure out what to do then. But yeah, I don't know. Things have changed since Google Glass. Google Glass was over 10 years ago. A lot has changed. People have a very different perception of like what privacy means now than they did when Google Glass came out. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's going to be an interesting thing to see. Google, to its credit, Google is very aware of this. I had a very long conversation with Google representatives at the Android XR
Mhm.
demo, talking about privacy and talking about Google Glass and the problems that they had. And Google's very aware of it. They're still not completely set on what they're going to do to convince people that this product is good and is something that they should get comfortable with. They're still trying to figure that out, but they're doing the core privacy things. There's a switch on the glasses, when you switch it off, it turns red, so people can visually see as they look at you that the glasses are not on. There's an LED that's on when you're recording something, and if you try to cover up the LED, the cameras don't work. These are things that we've seen on other smart glasses. So this is not innovation that Google is doing, but Google is doing the industry minimum at right now to make these as accepted as possible by the general public.
Mhm.
But in the end, it's just going to be like smartphones. People are going to say, is it worth sacrificing some of my privacy to have this computer in my pocket? And they're going to have to make the same call. Like, is it worth the sacrifices to privacy to have this heads up display that I can take anywhere I go? And I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I think that people are going to get into it. I think that 2 years from now, smart glasses are going to be much, much more popular than they are right now, and it's going to be much more accepted than it is. But I could be wrong. People could outright reject this. I don't know. We're gonna have to wait and see.
Yeah. I'm also curious to see which form factor in particular is going to really kick off. We've seen Meta, they're seeing the greatest success right now with their audio only Ray-Ban, like the displayless one. Google is
Mhm.
launching four different categories. They're also launching audio only. They're doing monocular, they're doing binocular, and then they're doing the full standalone kind of tethered uh Project Aura XR glasses. So I'm curious to see which one will be the most successful. My bet is the audio only ones will be the king because they're just going to be the cheapest ones. Those are the most
Mhm.
entry level
Yeah.
mass market ones. The monocular ones I see being kind of like the most successful middle ground one because they give you all the benefits of the audio only one, but that those extra features that you just can't get with an audio only experience, like the notifications, the maps, directions on the screen, your music player, things like that. I don't really see the. I guess like we didn't really see any demos. We didn't get any hands on with the binocular prototypes, right? Like they didn't show you anything with that. But I
Oh
can't
no,
really
they did.
imagine.
Yeah.
Oh, they did. They
It
did.
was yeah, it was very brief.
Okay.
And all I saw was maps. They showed me the
Mm,
maps display, but the maps had depth. So instead of just being a flat map that you could see like your location and navigation instructions, the maps actually had depth to them, which was cool. But like you're saying, it
yeah.
wasn't like, oh, this is
Not like a
this is a
game
game
changer.
changer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was not. So I agree. I don't see the binocular ones being as big of a hit as the the audio only and the monoculars.
Well, who knows? We still have until 2027 for those to come out. Maybe they'll wow us with some other product demo showing off what those binocular glasses can actually do.
Mhm.
And our final story for today is a discovery that Google is working on bringing back NFC based contact sharing. So, our resident APK teardown specialist, Assemble Debug, found evidence in the Google Play Services app that Google is working on a feature called Contact Exchange, and it could be the Android equivalent to iOS's name drop feature. So, for those of you who don't know, iOS devices have this feature where you can tap two iPhones together at the very top, and it'll play this kind of neat animation where it kind of like liquid flowing from one device to another. It kind of like beams the contact from one device to another. It looks really cool, admittedly. Like they did a lot of amazing work at nailing the animations and the UI for actually transferring contact data. But the funny thing is, Android devices and kind of smartphones in general have had NFC-based contact sharing for a very long time. It just wasn't very popular. You know, we had, as Scott mentioned at the top of the show, we had that what was that application called? But what was it called? Bump
Bump.
from 2011. Yeah, where you literally just tap two phones together and it transfers contact data. Like it's a very simple thing, but it worked. But over time, it kind of lost its luster. People weren't really interested in bumping their phones together as much as they used to anymore. And even the generic Android data transfer feature that used NFC to transfer information, Android Beam, was eventually deprecated. You can't use Android Beam anymore to transfer data. Now everything is done by QuickShare. But it looks like because of the popularity of NameDrop, Google might be looking to bring back a similar feature, and they're calling it, as I mentioned, Contact Exchange. And we actually got kind of a demo of this feature within the latest version of the Play Services app. So we can kind of see in this video that Assemble Debug recorded. Well, let me mute the audio there. That as he taps the phones together, it kind of plays this little animation at the very top where you can see this ripple effect. And we don't actually have the feature fully working, so we don't know exactly. We don't have like the pop up that shows you, what contact data you'll be able to share. But very likely you'll be able to pick the specific information that you're sharing with your contact. And yeah, as you can see here, you can select the kind of information you're sharing, and you have to confirm before you actually share it. So very similar to name drop, but because of the vast differences in the antenna array placement, NFC antenna array placement on Android phones, exactly where you're going to be tapping two phones together will probably be very different depending on the devices that you're actually trying to transfer contacts between. So it'll be interesting to see how this actually works out on Android devices, whether or not people will actually be using it. Because I don't really know that many people who actively use NameDrop on iOS. I'm sure it's popular enough, but I always just share contact information by just sharing the contact card on like Telegram or messages or email or something. It's a very very simple thing. It's been around for ages and it just works across every device that you use it on. So, what do you think of this feature, Scott? Do you think people will actually be using this contact exchange feature? Do you think people will actually go back to bumping their Android phones together to share contact information?
You know, like it to me, it's the contact information that's the kind of uninteresting thing about it. Like, yeah, like bumping phones together to share contact information. I can think of like a handful of situations that I'm in every year where that would be something I'd be like, oh, that'd be really helpful right now. Cause, I'm at a conference and I meet someone and they're like, oh, I'm so and so from so and such a company. We should talk to about, an article or a video or whatever. And I'd be like, oh, cool. Yeah, let's stay in touch. And then, oh, hey, this is convenient. And we bump our phones together and share contact info. Like that's cool. But that happens 4 or 5 times a year, so it's not that big of a deal. What this is missing is the ability to share things that you actually want to share with someone, which would be a photo or a video. That's to me what I want to see. Like I want it to be able to, be at a party, take a photo of my friends or whatever, and then be like, oh, here, you guys want it? Just bump from phone to phone and everyone gets the photo. Like that's what I want. That would be something that I think people would get really excited about because yeah, bumping two phones together to share something is a great idea. But the unsexy thing about it is that you're sharing contact information, which is not something people are like, ooh, that's so exciting. Whereas photos and videos, that would be much
Mm.
more cool.
Yeah, I know in QuickShare is actually like a hidden feature where if you both have QuickShare open, and you kind of tap them together, it automatically starts and completes the pairing process and transfers the file. It would be kind of cool if the person who wants to share the file, they're the only ones who has to have a quick share open. And you just go around
Mm.
tapping other people's phones and it just instantly starts sharing it with them. That would be really cool to have. I don't even know if that's possible right now, but if it is, today I learned. And today you learned, if you're listening to
Yeah.
this. But of course,
Yeah, like
the issue, of course, is that if even if this does end up working between Android phones, will it ever work between Android and iOS devices? And
right. I
no,
mean,
it's never
we
going to
have
happen.
we have AirDrop now.
We
So,
have
you
AirDrop
know,
now, but
we
without
have
Apple's
AirDrop
consent, we
now.
have AirDrop. But are we going to get NameDrop without Apple's consent?
Yeah.
Maybe Google, if you're working on it. Maybe they have a trick up their sleeves to make that happen in the near future. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, and we talked about this in the episode where we talked about the AirDrop thing happening. Is like this is a great idea for everyone. You know, if once again going back to what I was just talking about, being at a party, I'm at a party, I take a photo of a group, and they're like, "Oh, can I have that photo?" It shouldn't matter what phone they use. You know, I should just be able to boop 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 boop. Everyone gets the photo. Um, because it's in Apple's best interest to do that, because what's going to happen is that that group, I take a photo, let's say I take a photo of 10 people, and 5 of those people are Android users and 5 are iPhone users. I'm an Android user, so I bump the Android people, and then I say, iPhone users, sorry, you're out of luck, you'll have to get this photo some other way. You know, if I remember after the party, I'll email it to you or whatever, like whatever the situation might be. um so yeah, it's in Apple's best interest to make this work. So I don't know why they would fight it, but you know, once again,
Hmm.
that's Apple's like thing. It's always fighting interoperability for some reason.
Yeah.
Even though it's what their users want. So yeah, but yeah, I think this concept, bumping two phones together, it makes perfect sense. It's very intuitive. You know, it's just a matter of what is getting shared and how it's going to work across devices. That's the real killer.
Yeah. And unfortunately, at least contact information, from what I can tell, is pretty standardized. There's not that many contacts platforms out there. You have Apple Contacts, Samsung Contacts, Google Contacts, and they all support, as far as I can tell, importing contacts databases. So, like, it's pretty standardized. It's not very difficult to create a contacts card and share it between operating systems and platforms. It's just whether or not the platform itself will accept, once you tap two phones together, Apple phones have NFC, Android phones have NFC. What will actually happen when you tap them together? Will they actually initiate the contact sharing process? Is the question. And right now, that's not going to happen unless both Apple and Google work together to make it happen. But as we saw, sometimes they will work together to make things happen, like this new cross-platform data exchange thing that they talked about at the beginning of the show. Other times, Google really has to force it to happen, like with the AirDrop thing and with kind of the RCS kind of getting Apple to get the message, which they eventually did get the message, and they have added RCS support. It took a while, but it eventually did happen. But it's going to be interesting to see if Google can also get Apple on board with implementing name drop across iOS and Android devices. Okay. And that's everything we've got for you this week. You can find links to all the stories mentioned in this episode down in the show notes. And you can find more amazing stories to read over on AndroidAuthority.com.
Thanks for listening to the Authority Insights podcast. We publish every week on YouTube, Spotify, and other podcast platforms. You can follow us everywhere on social media at Android Authority, and you can follow me personally on Instagram, Blue Sky, and my own YouTube channel at C. Scott Brown.
As for me, I'm on most social media platforms posting day in and day out about Android. If you want to keep up with the latest in Android news, follow me on X, Threads, Mastodon, or Telegram at Mishaal Rahman. Thanks for listening.